So I can't do anything, it seems, without hearing about SPMO. I open up the YouTube app here in the comments section. You should do SPMO. I look at the video recommendations, SPMO. I walk outside my front door. The mailman hands me a package. What could this be? It's the summary prospectus for SPMO. So today, I'm going to cover SPMO. I'm going to compare it to some of my favorite high-flying stock ETFs of this year. My personal favorite, the Vanguard Information Technology Index, and see how it stacked up. The story starts at the Invesco headquarters. When one fine day in October of 2015, they were sitting at the round table thinking, what sector have we not covered yet? When one employee stands up and says, momentum. Momentum, they said? Yes, momentum. If you yourself are a math whiz, you may be thinking, and you would be incorrect. They were actually thinking the 12-month stock price change divided by the volatility. Seems like a reasonable balance. This, according to Invesco, only accounts for the stocks that are in an uptrend and not the stocks that shoot way up and then drop like a penny stock. So they're really essentially looking to buy the winners and put it in this fund. Every 6 months, they have a reconstitution where the laggards get pushed out and the winners come in. Hopping on to stock analysis, looking at the 1-year chart, we are up 34%. I think this significant increase is probably what's got the internet talking about the stock. Going back even further, looking at the 3-year chart, we are up 175%. Whoa, that's quite a bit. You're almost tripling your money at that point. Who wouldn't want to triple their money in 3 short years? Now, me personally, I try to keep my investments as vanilla as possible. And, call me old-fashioned, but I like the Vanguard funds. When you buy a Vanguard fund, like the Total Stock Market Index, VU, the S&P 500, or my favorite technology ETF, VGT, you're pretty much getting the Toyota Corolla or the Toyota Sienna of investing. It's exactly what you want without any of the bells and whistles. Except those new Siennas. They actually have a fridge in them. I think of all the things I could put in that fridge. But this video is actually about your investing fridge and whether you should put SPMO in it. Of course, the next part of the video is not investing advice. I want to compare this to one of my all-time favorite funds, VGT, and see how the two stack up together. So year to date, we're neck and neck, but looking at the chart, it looks like SPMO is just edging out VGT. It has returned 26% versus almost 23% for VGT. Backing out to the 1-year chart, we see that VGT's actually pulled ahead a little bit, but SPMO's no slouch at 34%. So let's back on out to that 3-year chart that was so impressive from before for SPMO. And we see that on the 3-year chart, it's actually crushing VGT. Ooh, that hurts a little. On the 5-year chart, SPMO's still outperforming at 160% versus around 135%. So let's go back to the 10-year chart. And this is where we see VGT pull ahead on the 10-year chart here. VGT's up a masterful 811%, while SPMO's only up 554%. Now let's back off to the maximum of these two funds. We can go back to inception of SPMO, which is actually pretty close here. And we can see that VGT's returned 868%, while SPMO's no slouch at 577%. So if you had held either of these funds over the past decade, you couldn't have went wrong. As long as you held it through the ups and downs and the pandemic, kind of all those scares, Liberation Day, you would be sitting very pretty in either of these funds. If you had VGT, you would be sitting better if you'd held it over the long term. But at least over the past 5 years, if you were in SPMO, Invesco's Momentum ETF, you actually would have pulled ahead if you were a new investor. So in doing some research, I looked at a couple of other funds that invest in momentum. I was wondering, does Vanguard have a momentum fund? And they do, VMFO. And let me tell you, since inception in 2018, I'm not impressed compared to SPMO and VGT, just looking at that chart. Ouch. Another one that I saw recommended a lot is a newer fund, the Market Desk Focused US Momentum ETF. So one of the things people are talking about as a potential positive for FMTM that I've noticed is that they actually reconstitute this every month instead of every 6 months, which possibly could give them a little bit of an edge. Looking at the total return data, I haven't seen that play out yet, but I'm very hopeful and curious to see exactly how this fund does over the long term. I would like to see a few more years of FMTM and how it does before I would consider investing in that. And as always, Invesco funds, unless they're doing something, revolutionary, usually have pretty good expense ratios. So 0.13%. So nothing major there. A lot of the Vanguard funds are 0.09. So I can't complain about an expense ratio on SPMO. Now, hopping over, I like to, do some research about how much overlap funds would have with other funds in my portfolio. So I'd put in VGT and SPMO just to see how much overlap by weight they have, and it's around 35%, which is honestly less than I thought. I would think a lot of the momentum would be in the tech sector, and I think as you'll see when we compare these holdings and which one has more of which, why SPMO has done better recently. I think a lot of that has to do with its significantly higher weight in Micron. It's actually overweight by about 8% when compared to VGT, whereas VGT has a higher percentage of late in Apple and Nvidia, Microsoft, some big names there, but some more historic Magnificent Seven, whereas SPMO seems to have benefited quite a bit from this recent rally in the memory sector. So overall, I'd like to see how SPMO does over the next few years. It's definitely on my watch list. For the growth engine of my portfolio, I think I'm going to keep things just the same with VGT. I like to try to keep my portfolio as simple as possible. In my taxable account, it's mainly just VGT, SCHD, and then the S&P 500. So what do you guys think about hopping on the momentum train? Let me know in the comments.